Good afternoon to everyone in the room. Welcome, everyone. My name is Damon Nurse, and I am on the Youth Village team, and I will be your moderator and host for tonight. I want to officially welcome you to our Intergenerational Conversations project, and this is our second event for the year called Capital Catalyst, where we'll talk today about how you can go about securing capital and finance to fuel your entrepreneurial growth. Before diving in, I'd like to know that this event is being recorded. We will pause the recording during the networking portion of the event, however. Before we go any further, I would like to hand over to Deborah Nurse to do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Damon. I'm Deborah Nurse, one of the directors and co-founder of the Youth Village. Before we get into tonight's agenda, I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement that I'm joining this call from the land which is now called Ajax, Ontario. Since time immemorial, this land has been the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of First Island Nation. I would also like to, while we are joining this session virtually and from different places, we are all living and working on stolen land. Today, this land is still home to many Indigenous people, and I am grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Okay, I'm now going to talk a little bit about the intergenerational conversation. As Damon said, this is our second for this year. It's also the second year of our intergenerational project. So if you like numbers, it's 2-2, second year, and it's the second one for this year. So the intergenerational project is a 3-year initiative to bring together both young and mature entrepreneurs through knowledge exchange and transfer through collaborative interaction to strengthen the ecosystem of Black entrepreneurs in the Southern Ontario. The IGC project is in partnership with the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, ACBN, and I see representatives from ACBN here. And is supported by the Government of Canada through the Federal Development Corporation. ACBN is the lead partner in the ecosystem project, and I'm not sure who from ACBN is here, so I'll just give ACBN a chance to just say hi.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Chris Betcowie here from ACBN. Deb, it's good to see you and the team. Excited for another session. So just a quick intro about the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. We were established about 5 years ago. 6 entrepreneurs came together to support Black entrepreneurs, particularly in Peel. Since that time, we have supported Black entrepreneurs across Southern Ontario, and Deb and team are byproducts of the work that we've been doing. So one of the things that we're really excited about is this partnership that we do have with Youth Village, and we are excited to help with different services and product offerings to entrepreneurs, be it access to capital. We have a microloan fund, be it access to entrepreneurial training. We have a business accelerator, as well as access to different consultants who can help you move your business forward as well. The one thing that I would just say in terms of an area of focus for us as well is really supporting entrepreneurs in the social enterprise space and looking to help them get grants as well. So we do have ongoing monthly trainings about that. But I'm really excited to dive into the conversation, Deb, and thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you, Chris Beth. Thank you for those words. And ACBN is doing fantastic work. They're doing quite a bit of new and interesting things. At this stage, I'll pass you back over to Damon for us to get started. Damon?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So for tonight's agenda, we're going to start off hearing from our founders panel to share with us their expertise and their experiences in the venture and the startup space. And it's going to be followed by a moderated panel, Q&A session, breakout rooms, so you can hear from the speakers in smaller groups and that give you an opportunity to network. And then we'll wrap up the event. So let's dive right into it. So for tonight's event, as I mentioned, we're going to have a really insightful conversation around finance for Black founders. It is with great pleasure that I introduce two very knowledgeable, very experienced entrepreneurs in their own right to this conversation. First off, we have Derrick Raphael from Icon Talent. Derrick is an experienced social entrepreneurship visionary, startup leader, and venture capitalist with an eye towards the future. He has worked in the not-for-profit and community development sectors for over 20 years and is the co-founder and CEO of Icon Talent Partners, which has changed the lives of many BIPOC professionals and youth since its inception in 2019. Due to the efforts of Icon, he has also in turn changed the face of the venture capital and private equity ecosystems in Canada. His experiences as part of the founding teams of two early stage venture capital firms has proven impactful as he looks to impact, scale, and support the development of more global startups launched by individuals from equity-seeking groups, such as those led by women, BIPOC communities, LGBTQ+ communities, immigrants, and others. He is also the proud father of two young boys, Harper and Preston, and the loving husband to Marlon Raphael, co-founder and CEO of Icon Talent Partners. You can also get in touch with Derrick after this event via email at his email address at derrick.raphael1@gmail.com. We'll also have our team post that link in the chat for you. We also have joining Derrick, Nia Pryce, who is a community manager at Forum Ventures. Nia is a community manager at Forum Ventures and a B2B software as a service focused venture capital firm, which she supports founders by building and activating Forum's network of 500+ founders, as well as their communities of corporate innovators, ecosystem operators, partners, and more. Prior to Forum, she worked in the container farming space focused on increasing food and sovereignty and building community. You know, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with you both, Derrick and Nia. And we have such rich experiences in this space that we would love to explore and to just get some ideas and thought starters from you. Before we begin, I do want to let everyone know at this point, if you have any questions or thoughts for our panelists, you may raise your hand using the hand function on Zoom so we can hear from you, or feel free to type your questions in the chat. I'll be taking a quick look as well as some of our other U Village members to make sure that all of your questions are answered. So for our moderated panel, Derrick, I'd probably like to start with you just to kick things off. I'll ask you a few questions and then I'll pass on a few questions to Nia. But Derrick, just to kind of get things going, the big question in the room, you know, we're here to talk about financing and how we can go about as entrepreneurs, as minority entrepreneurs, whether we're women-led, BIPOC community, LGBTQ+. So my big question for the night is, what do you think are some of the key challenges that BIPOC professionals and youth face when it comes to accessing financial support for their startup ventures? And what would be some strategies and tools you would recommend to help address those key challenges?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. You know, definitely a privilege to kind of share with the community, because I feel like, unfortunately, there'll be individuals like myself and Nia that may have had a lot of exposure, but maybe not always the right platforms to be able to share. So I think first and foremost, and this is quite unfortunate in many cases, is access. Just general access to those that hold the purse strings. I think that's probably the most critical. I think in kind of going into a little bit deeper in terms of how can you get access to the capital, I think it really comes down to expanding your network. I'll kind of give a brief personal example is that when my wife and I started Icon Talent Partners, it was literally just the two of us pushing our now eldest son, Harper, in a baby carriage in 2019. And at that time, the ecosystem looked a lot different than it does now, or it did a couple of years ago when it pertained to investing in Black people, Black startups, Black innovation, et cetera. At that time, it was, I'll say, incredibly difficult to get corporations to say, we want to invest in what you're doing. But I'll say nothing really replaces hard work and kind of going through that grit. And Nia, I know I don't want to steal your thunder, but you'll probably go into more detail, especially from the startup side. But I'll say that a good example that I take is when I had a member of our community and Icon Talent Partners that wanted to enter the venture capital space, I said, it's my mission to help them fulfill that. So I literally reached out to every single VC firm in Canada, like everybody. And that was a crazy task, but it resulted in getting 2 messages, cold call on LinkedIn. And it happened to come from the same venture capital firm. That firm was Georgian Partners, which is, I think, arguably one of the largest VCs in Canada. So I feel that for a lot of Black entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color, nothing replaces hard work. And I'll be more than happy to share some other examples as well.
Okay, no, that's a really good response. And, I do take away your main point there about access being a serious issue for all of us in the space. But it sounds like the answer also lies within yourself to kind of just go out there and beat the ground and never really give up and be truly resilient. On that note, and another question I have for you, Derrick, bringing the solution to the problem onto the individual and them having the ability to, just go out there and try to expand their network as best as possible. As a social entrepreneurship visionary and a venture capitalist, for me, sometimes as well too, I see a linkage between those who are resilient and it having an effect on their personal selves and the way how they manage themselves personally, then have an effect on their resilience in the business world. So for you, Derrick, what do you see as a relationship between personal finances and business finances? Do you think as a budding entrepreneur, we should spend more time understanding the personal finance of sides and you understanding and mastering that resilience, that always, getting information out there? Does that have a knock-on effect in a person's business and their enterprises?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're very much so interconnected. I think that for a lot of individuals, it's hard to do, quote unquote, the good work, or from my own personal perspective, God's work, if you don't necessarily have your own house in order. If your own house isn't in order, if your finances are a mess, if you don't know, like, am I able to pay my bills this week or this month, you're not going to have the ability to focus on the work that you're doing in the community. So I think it's imperative for you to have your own house in order, as well as your organization, be it a not-for-profit, be it a for-profit, be it a VC firm, in order as well. I think they're very much so interconnected.
Okay, thank you for that. That reminds me of a saying, God helps those who help themselves.
Amen.
So Nia, on to you. A couple of questions I have for you. In your experience, what do you think would be some effective strategies, especially after we just mentioned that there is an interconnection between personal finances and business finances? What do you think would be some effective strategy for increasing financial literacy and empowering Black-led businesses so they can help navigate that funding landscape?
For me, I would say that I think when it comes to like having a better understanding of personal finances or just finances in general, I think that especially in my own case, like when I was younger, the only thing that you're exposed to in terms of how to manage finances is what's going on in your own family. I didn't know anything outside of like, this is how my parents budget, so this is how I'm going to budget. As I've gotten older, there's times where I'm like, I don't know what you guys were thinking. I love them dearly, but there's just times where like, okay, maybe I would have made that decision differently, and you can only know that as you get older. So I think that for any like parents on the call, exposing your kids to like not even just how you do things, but the different ways of doing like budgets and having them kind of plan if they want to achieve something. I remember when I was little, I really wanted like an iPod. My parents were like, okay, well, you have to set up a financial plan of how you're going to get there. And like now with the beloved internet, it's like easy to see what the different options and stuff are. But I think that that's really important, just making sure that like as early as possible, you can try out different financial strategies, see what works for you, see what motivates you. And then I think, as Derrick said, like once you kind of figure it out from a personal level, it really does impact the way you look at finances and stuff on a business lens as well.
Yeah, no, and I certainly agree with that. Taking a little way from the individual, how can corporate innovators and ecosystem partners, particularly as you work in that space, how can they contribute as well to help bridging that financial gap for Black founders?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we're working on a lot at Forum. I think that venture capital is like a word that people think is great, but people don't always, it's not the best fit for everyone. It's not the like ultimate path that every founder needs to go on. Prior to working at Forum, I worked for a social enterprise that was bootstrapped for 5.5 years before we raised capital on the private equity side of 2 million. So like you don't need to take venture capital right away. You don't need to be on the path to just scale fast and all of that stuff. I think on the corporate side, and Forum is really like passionate about this. It's like really educating founders on like, is this the right fit for you? And is this the right journey that you want to be on? And also going a stage ahead of a stage behind, where we are. So we invest in founders at the early stage once they're ready to take on an over 100K investment. But we're like launching a boot camp that works with founders well before that, as they're like designing their business model, to say, if you want to design a business model and you think you want to go the venture capital route, these things need to be true. And otherwise, these are the other options that exist for you, whether that's grant funding, whether that's like angel money, et cetera. So I think that just on the corporate side, it's really, I mean, not all corporations want to do the extra work and want to put in the efforts to be ethical and support the community. But those that do, I think it's going the extra mile to make sure that you're not just marketing to those who you want, but also educating them to make sure they're making the right decisions.
Right. No, excellent point. And I do quite agree that, maybe venture capital is not always the best route for everyone. It's the glitz and glamour. We see that a lot on television. So it's kind of the path that we like, because we think, hey, that's an opportunity to get $2-3 million and a large amount. There's no way it should fail. But as you correctly identified, there are many different ways for us to kind of bootstrap it ourselves. Angel investing. Is there, can you put together a pitch deck for your family? How can you, generate that revenue to a certain level before you can then instill the confidence in a venture capitalist to invest with you. So I absolutely agree with that. Another question I have for you, Nia, based on your perspective, what are some emerging trends or opportunities you think that can benefit Black-led businesses? How can they position themselves to leverage these opportunities or trends out there currently happening to kind of secure that funding, or maybe use that to generate some ideas of what their business could be?
Yeah, I think building on what Derrick had said before, I think that in the past, honestly, we're in 2023, so maybe 3 years, the landscape for like Black-led businesses, I'll just talk about Toronto specifically, is like completely different than it was before. I think there are so many great like organizations, whether it's like the Black Entrepreneurship Alliance or the Black Founders Network out of like University of Toronto, that exists now that just didn't exist in the past. So I think that the key thing for Black founders are really, as Derrick said, like reaching out and building that network and reaching out to the ecosystem, because those organizations are there to support you and have full staff like where we are today, like here at Youth Village, putting events like this on that are here to connect you to those people in the ecosystem who are like passionate and like devoted to supporting you. So I think that that's really the key, is tapping into the ecosystem that we're continuing to build and taking advantage of those opportunities and grants and things like that are available now that may not have been available in the past.
Okay. So it really sounds like, finding your network is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
just getting I now want to kind of open it to both of you guys. So when I ask a question, Derrick, if you want to respond first, and Nia second. So for both of you, what do you see as some key considerations or best practices for Black founders and youth founders when it comes to financial planning and forecasting for their business? How can they ensure that they are setting realistic goals, managing their finances effectively? I know oftentimes we have a really wonderful business plan where in 3 years, we're at $4 million in revenue, and oftentimes there's a disconnect between what you envision and you being able to tell that story to potential investors to then want to fund your business. So just wanted to hear from you guys in terms of best practice or set considerations when it comes to that financial planning and forecasting side of things. Derrick?
Yeah, definitely happy to jump in. I'll say that this conversation probably changed a lot over the past 12 months. If we would have had this conversation about a year or 2 years ago, especially for those on the venture capital path, it would have been more of a conversation of grow at all costs. Obviously, that is over. But just a caveat, Nia, you probably also relate to this, is at least in my experiences working with Black founders, especially within the venture capital startup realm, it has always typically been grow intentionally, grow where it's like real metrics, not grow just for the sake of growing. I think that's typically been the purview for other communities, where it's like, here's $50 million, grow at all costs. I think that there's a little bit of more of a business that's required for Black founders in particular, or founders of color, where you have to have real metrics, real revenue, which I think is very different. So I think, and it pertains to like your projections, I think is grow at a pace that makes sense, make financial projections that make sense, which maybe for people on this call, they'd be like, why would you even have to say that? But in startup land, we know that things are very, very different. And the same issues that founders of 10 and 20 person companies have to adhere to is the same metrics that big companies did not adhere to. Hence why we have all these layoffs at Google and Apple, and they're quote unquote the smartest people in the room. So how'd they get it wrong? So I think a lot of times is us growing at a measured rate. What I've seen for a lot of founders now is a lot of frugality. I think that's always key. I think keeping money for a rainy day. When the pandemic hit, a lot of people were crushed because they were living on the edge as a corporation, where if anything bad happened, I'm done. And you saw that was kind of a test of bench strength. But I feel that what we're currently going through is a correction on the market, where a lot of fluff that was funded 2 years ago died and the real resilient companies survived. And I think that's the same type of mindset people should have right now.
Agreed. Nia?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that that's exactly it. If you have a sound business, it doesn't matter what the market looks like you'll be okay. I think the key thing that I always say to founders, since we work with founders at such an early stage, is no matter what your idea is, how are you going to make money? I think a lot of founders come up with ideas and projections and all of that, but they haven't even sorted out who they're going to sell to, why they're going to buy, and what that market actually looks like. So I think that that's the key thing that I would say to all founders is really have a strong go-to-market strategy, and then also don't invest money or time and then do a check and then keep it going. I think that you can, I think such as starting a wait list before you even launch your business is so worth it. Checking out not just research that already exists of oh, well, it says that there's this many people who are interested in buying XYZ thing. Check how many people go out and do market research yourself and see how much, if this is my product, this is what it looks like, how much are people willing to buy, what does the demographics of these people look like. So do as much tangible hard evidence-based research for your own business as you can before putting in additional time, money, and effort. So you're always benchmarking yourself and then setting realistic expectations.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from both of you, Nia, you kind of spelled out a little more clearly, but market research is kind of very essential to help you then set realistic goals. The more you understand exactly who your customer is, what they're looking for, on how much they're willing to pay would give you a better idea and a more grounded reality in terms of what your projections would look like. And it also seems like you need to, I know we like to do 5 and 10-year projections, but as a founder, especially when you're taking it from idea, you probably should focus on just getting the first couple of months in, the first couple of years in, to then be able to know after you have enough data points to then be able to extrapolate it out into a 3 and 4 and 5-year financial plan.
Yeah, definitely. I also think at the beginning, the business that you are envisioning is not the business that you end up with. So to make a 10-year plan for something that we're not at step 1 for, it doesn't make sense yet. So I think just really getting those data points in the beginning is important.
Okay.
Damon, there are a couple questions in the chat. I'm not sure if you want to get them. Or
Okay, we do have some questions rolling in. Just taking a quick look, I may not be able to ask all of them, as I want to make sure we have enough time for the breakout rooms, where I think it's going to also be valuable for many of the participants. Someone posed a question: what preparation is necessary? And Nia, you can start off with answering this, because you did mention that you do have a boot camp where you get persons prepared and ready for certain stages of the business. What preparation is necessary to have in place to enable Black businesses to embrace change, which is constant and remain sustainable?
I think, yeah, to the point that I said before, just really focused on like those individual steps. I think that some founders will come in like day 1, they have an idea and they're telling you what they're going to do to raise their like Series C. And it's like, actually, you need a go-to-market strategy and you need just like a little bit of revenue and that's it. So I think that really setting up your business, really focusing on just like, yes, you need to think long-term. And I think that that's where, as Derrick said, like making sure you're someone who has a sound understanding of finances is really important. But really setting metrics yourself and keeping your head down on like, what do I need to do to achieve the next step? And really focused on that is really important to then set you up to be successful long-term. And I think that, as Derrick said, with Black founders, I think that that's always been the key, honestly, when it comes to fundraising, because it's not the same opportunities of like, yeah, my dad's friend's just going to give me like my angel round. Or I always tell founders, like when people say like, oh, my family and friends round, like if I had to, I'm not a founder, but if I had to raise a family and friends round right now, like that's not an option. Like there's no one for that. You have to then pretty much go out and already be raising outside capital from day 1, whereas other people may have that network of people who just based on how they know you or the character of how they know you're like, yeah, you can have some money, but that's not always the case for Black founders. So really making sure that you have just a strong business model, a strong plan, and not just like business plan, like plan of execution of how you're going to get to those key metrics is really important.
Both of the panelists, what do you think would be some resources that persons can go to if they're at the stage of wanting to really craft a business plan and financial projection? Any resources or insights you can share with them if they don't even have a page start written as yet? How can they get from zero to a really good and effective and realistic business and financial plan?
All right,
Derrick,
I'll pop things off. I would say, I think there's a lot of really great organizations just on this call. So I would say the Youth Village is going to be a source that people should go to. I would say ABCN is a source that people can go through. I would say that Forum Ventures, if you're trying to do something in the venture capital, venture backable space, that's a good place to go to. I'll say that we're in a very different ecosystem than we were 2 to 3 years ago, where we have things like the Black Founders Network. We have people that have been doing really amazing things for a long time, like Isaac, over at Dream Makers and Dream Ventures and those types of groups. I think for those that are looking for investments, there's Melissa Allen, which is a Black female venture capitalist. That we have phenomenal people. We have the Firewood with those groups as well. Like there's a lot of entities now that exist that never did exist. And I think that this is almost like a Black entrepreneurial renaissance that we've never ever had before. So I think that it's rarefied air, to say the least. But I think those are some of the resources that I would point out immediately.
Nia, anything you would add to that?
No, I totally agree. I think that those same ones, I think that my key advice would be, I love Forum and obviously I work there, so don't tell them, but I do think don't go to like an equity seeking accelerator first. I think that you should, there's tons of like the resources that Derrick mentioned. A lot of them don't take any equity in your company. I think when you're really starting out at the beginning, there's so many great resources that are available that you can tap into either for free or like very little, and then you don't have to give up any stake in the company that you're building, because you want to make sure that at a point in which you're doing that, you're sure that it's the right decision for your company and it's worth what you're giving them. So I think see how far you can get on your own and with those access to those great resources first, and then go from there.
Yeah, I would also like to recommend as well to persons, feel free to check out liveplan.com. It's a really good software used to create business plan and financial models, and they basically take you through every step and stage of the business plan, from what should be an executive summary, how you should begin to identify your audiences and so on. And it costs us really effective, like a couple of dollars a month. But if you're really serious about taking your business to the next stage and creating a business plan, I would recommend a software like liveplan.com or anyone like that, where they can kind of guide you through step by step every single section of that business plan. And also feel free to rely on your peers, your partners. Hey, take a look at this business plan. What do you think? Do you think is effective? And I know some of us are very scared about the critique that we may get, but going to your network to ask them what you want, potentially are your customers, is really impactful and would be a part of that market research that Nia spoke about.
Damon, there are a couple other questions. There was one, does a company determine when it's ready for VC financing? Like, what are the key inputs and indicators? And then there's one specifically for Derrick, like you talk about the metrics are important, but if you could identify some of those metrics. And there are a few others.
I'll jump in on the question regarding the metrics. I'll say that kind of depends on what you're trying to do. And I think, Nia, you made a really good point about, I think it's kind of sexy right now. I mean, we have Dragon's Den, we have Shark Tank, everybody wants venture capital money, they want a big check. You as an entrepreneur have to decide if that's the route that you want to take. Because unfortunately, sometimes getting venture capital investment will be what kills your business. Because then you'll have someone saying, hey, example, Damon, now let's say if YouFields was a for-profit startup type of initiative, they might say like, hey, we'll give you $5 million. A lot of people say like, that's amazing, let's grow faster. But you may have too much money and not be able to leverage it effectively. And if you're not having that growth, if anything will happen, and this will happen for the economic situation, people raise hundreds of millions of dollars when capital was cheap 2 years ago. Now the bill is becoming due, and those same people are going out with valuations that have not increased the same way. And now their companies are destroyed. Like, it's over for a lot of companies that were great businesses, great startups, but they got too much money that was cheap. I will say the metrics you're looking for is like your monthly recurring revenue. Like, does that make sense for you to get the multiples that you need to continue that growth, to get that investment? I will say, do you have the capacity in terms of your tech business? Like, is your tech stack strong enough? Can you withstand millions of new users? I think those are realities. That can you do that proper scaling? And then I think for people to realize, like, do you as a founder, are you going to be able to scale with that business? The same CEO that starts a smaller startup, a lot of times not the same person or the same skill sets that are needed down the road. So unless you're also, I'll say, evolving as a founder to be that ready for a unicorn, you need to also make that decision. I think that for a lot of people in this space, this innovation startup space, sometimes lifestyle business is a term of slander. But I think, a lot of lifestyle businesses were like, I make $2 million a year and I pay myself $250,000 or $500,000, whatever makes sense. where, you know, that's a viable business. But if you inject some venture capital funding, that's going to really change what you're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, a big thing that person may not even understand is that if you get too much funding, you may end up losing commanding decision making in your business. You may end up, you know, someone that may end up wanting 51% of your business. So especially when you're very young, and as Nia mentioned, you're now trying to figure out what the business is. You may not have the ability anymore to pivot or to grow and to creep or to make the changes into your business. So you end up having to follow someone else's direction, which can lead you down the wrong road. So really important point you made there, Derrick. And another question we did have was just making sure I'm looking at all of the questions. How does a company or a business know when it's ready for VC financing? Nia, if you can start us off.
Yeah, I think that it really depends. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on like what industry you're in. It depends on the metrics that you have, and it depends on what you want the valuation for your company to be. So as I said, the last startup that I worked in, we raised 2 million, but after 5.5 years. And I think that for us, it was making sure that we got we raised the amount of capital that we wanted, but at the percentage that like set our company up to be valued at a number. And as Derrick said, valued at a number that would allow us to like continue to scale, that we would be able to keep hitting metrics. So the next time we wanted to raise, that was still an option for us. So I think the key thing though, I would say to consider for founders, number one, I think you need to exhaust all of your own, and not in a bad way, but all of your other options first. So I think make sure that you've leveraged all the grants that you can. You've leveraged like different opportunities that do not require you to take equity, like to give equity up for your business. The next thing I would say is you be ready when you're looking for more of a strategic partner. I think that the venture capital firm that you decide that invests in you should be a value add. You shouldn't give someone, you're giving someone a part of your company. It's not like, I think that there's a imbalance typically that people view when it comes to founders who are seeking funding, that when they look at VCs, like the VCs have the upper hand, but in reality, if you have a sound business, like, no, they don't, because you are the one, you're giving them an opportunity to be part of your company. So make sure that you're partnering with VCs that are the right fit for you and then are going to add on. They can make customer introductions. They can introduce you to other investors. They can help you figure out, at Forum, we have an accelerator, so we can help you figure out your go-to-market strategy and things like that. So I think you're ready when you're looking for that strategic alignment, when you're ready for that injection of capital and to get your company to a certain valuation. And when you have a plan for the money that you're going to get. I think you should not go for VC funding just because you feel that your company should be at X point, or that you'd like some capital to have in your back pocket. I think there needs to be a real strategic plan for what you're going to do with this capital, whether it's hiring, whether it's marketing, whether it's additional like sales help, whatever it is, there needs to be a plan. And I think at that point, once you've assessed what you're hoping to get out of the money, who you're hoping to partner with, and where you see the direction of your business going, then it's time for you to look for venture capital.
Okay, no, love it. Yeah. I want to encourage the audience. We're having a really lovely conversation with two really experienced persons in the space, Derrick and Nia. Again, feel free to write any questions that you may have. If you want to, ask a question directly, just raise your hand. We'd be happy to hear some more questions from you. And as those questions come in, I do have a couple of other questions for you. So we've talked a lot about, how you can go about raising financing. We've talked about networking is extremely important. That we've talked about how first having getting your house in order first before you can go to other persons. So getting a strong mastering of your personal finances is really key as well. So we've talked about some strategies and how you can go to venture capitalists and knowing when you're ready. But outside of the traditional methods of fundraising via series rounds of financing from angel to family and friends and venture capitalists. In your time in the industry, are there any other specific financing options or alternative funding methods that Black founders can explore beyond the traditional avenues? How can they identify and leverage some of these alternative opportunities for fundraising?
All right. I will say one that sometimes I think people don't always consider is debt. Is taking debt in your business, sometimes that can be the best option. So instead of you saying, hey, I'm startup A, I'm going to take so many millions of dollars, or hopefully, I don't know about million, but I'm going to take so much debt, is when you take debt, one, it's like getting like a mortgage for your house. You can pay that back, you know? And at that same point, you're not going to be in a position where you've given up ownership. For a lot of people, especially I see for younger, and when I mean younger, it's not always key to age. It might just be key towards when you get into the startup or entrepreneurship ecosystem, is don't give up equity like it's something that's not important. And I think that even goes for, you know, your co-founders, is making sure you're very aligned and making sure you have value alignment. But I think a big thing is debt for sure. I think that, you know, in terms of getting revenue is, you know, I think getting the strategic partners. So you have to have money coming in terms of your clients. So that's something that you can also leverage. But I think those are some of the ones that I would traditionally, that people aren't considering, that I think are invaluable.
Yeah, I agree with Derrick. I think that founders are really nervous about debt when I think in reality, it's just like unsexy, unlike VC funding. There's no, yeah, I just think that's not as highlighted as much as it should be. I think that debt financing is a really great opportunity for founders. Obviously, don't go crazy, but you do still have to pay it back. But I do think that it's a great opportunity, especially if you're between rounds or if you're, yeah, just trying to make key. I think debt is really great when you have key initiatives that you're trying to achieve. And so you know what this debt is going towards and you know what that money should then bring in. I totally think strategic partners in terms of having your customers that are strategic is really helpful. When I worked in the container farming space, we partnered with a university food service company, and they were our customer because they bought our farm, but they signed us on to like every new cafeteria that they ended up working on. So by having them as our customer, but we were strategically aligned with them, they helped just continue to like provide us with revenue, and that allowed us to grow. So I think that that's super helpful. And then I think that grants are really underutilized. I think you can even get grants for like super specific parts of your businesses. And I think it's especially relevant as companies like continue to grow. And I think especially like under 50 employees, there's grants for everything from like going on a company retreat, hiring summer students. We had a grant funded co-working space that we worked out of. So marketing grants, like there are so many different elements of your business that can be covered by various grants. And when I worked for that business, our accelerator did a great job of sending us those grants they kept us up to date on what the new grant funding was. So we focused on that.
Okay, excellent. Now, I do have a question now for our entire audience. We do want to just take a quick poll just to understand where a person's in their business cycle. So please feel free to drop in the chat one of 4 letters. I'm about to share the poll with you. So A, you don't have an idea, but you know you want to get a business started and you're here to get some ideas. So are you at a stage where you don't know quite yet what you would like to do, but you know for sure you do want to do a business? So that's A. B, you do have an idea of where you want to go, but you're at the stage now of formulating, getting that business plan together, doing your market research. C, have you actually started your business? Are you in between 0 and 24 months of starting? So you're a little beyond just having an idea. You may have some business registration, or you may have launched a website, but are you in your very early stages? Or D, are you 2 years and older in your business? So again, A, you don't have an idea of your business, but you know you really want to get something going. B, you do have an idea and you're in the process of doing that foundational work with a business plan, doing your market research. C, you do have an idea and you're either between 0 and 24 months of getting your business started. Or D, you are 2 years and beyond. in your business cycle. If you don't mind, everyone, just drop a letter into the chat, A, B, C, or D, just so we have an understanding of where our audience is right now, so we can maybe ask a couple more questions tailored to where most of our audience is. Okay, I'm getting a lot of D's. So we do have some relatively seasoned entrepreneurs with us, looking for maybe more ideas of how they can take their business to the next stage. We do have some A's as well, as well too, with persons who know for sure they want to get a business started, but they're not quite sure what that idea is. They're still kind of exploring the business landscape. Feel free again, just quickly drop into the chat. A, you don't have an idea of the business, but you know you want to get started in something. B, you do have an idea and you're at the foundational stages. C, your business has started, you're within 0 to 24 months of operation. Or D, you're beyond 24 months of operation. Okay, so a good mixture of between I would say A's and a few D's that are taking lead. We do have a couple of C's. It's really good to know. Really good to know. So based on what is coming in from the chat, I know I mentioned we can use Life Plan or any kind of business software to kind of help you with that. But in terms of ideation, it really kind of starts there. What would be some insight or some advice you can give to potential founders as to what would be a good idea? Oftentimes, we have a good idea, but only until we start the business do we realize that maybe it's not a very large addressable market. Maybe there are only myself and a couple other persons who are potential customers. Sometimes we have a large potential customer base. Is a really good idea, but our solution may not be the most effective, or our solution may not be in line with our financing opportunities. We may have a solution that requires a venture capitalist of 10 million as a startup, and we don't have a solution that can start off as a bootstrap solution and then it can scale. So just to the panelists, what do you think would be some advice and some strategies and ideas to go about as you explore the ideation stage of your business? Nia, you feel free to start us off.
Sure. I would say the key thing would just be to talk to, like, even if you just have an idea of a problem that you want to solve, you don't even have to have an idea of like how you want to solve it. I just think if you're like, this thing is frustrating me, or I see this thing frustrating a lot of people, or as an opportunity that I don't think is being addressed, I think going out and speaking to as many people who you think are experiencing that problem is really the key. There's a key book that we recommend like all of our founders to read called The Mom Test, and it just teaches you like how to properly do like customer discovery in a way that makes people want to help you, because everyone wants to help you. Not everyone will want to, I don't know what the best word is, but I would say like people are willing to help. People sometimes don't want to always give up their time, or they might think like, why am I helping you like create this business? Like, I don't know, do this idea that's not relevant to me. But I think the book does a really good way of framing how to do outreach in a way where you're reaching out to people to say, hey, I see that you're experiencing this problem. I think a lot of people experience it. I'd love to like pick your brain on how I could go about like making that easier for you. And then through that, by addressing like, okay, these are the different ways these people are experiencing this problem. This is also how they would see solving this problem. You're eliminating that work from yourself and figuring out how you're going to solve it. And then later on down the line, you then have these people as your first customers, because you're telling them, hey, I talked to you. You said you were having this problem. I came up with a solution for it. Do you want to try it? And you've created that like personal connection with them. So I think that's really the key. It's not like you have to go out and build right away. You have to go out and figure out how you're going to like beat all your competitors right off the bat. I think it's just talking to the people who you think, whose problem you're trying to solve, and seeing the best way for you to solve it. And then even through that, you'll be able to come up with like differentiation and all of that stuff from competitors in the space as well. And then exactly as you said, but there has to be a point where you're like, if this, obviously you see this a lot in like certain elements of technology, such as like health tech and stuff. If this costs $10 million to solve, am I in a place in order to do so? But I think step one is definitely determining, is this even a problem worth solving? And then you can get to the rest after.
Oh, great insight, Derrick.
Yeah, I would say, one thing that I've seen with a lot of founders, and I think there's two things. The first thing is it's a lot more compelling when you're pitching something or if you're presenting something that you have some type of subject matter expertise. If you can say, like, I know X, like if someone was coming to me and they said, I want to create a financial product or a fintech, and they shared that I've worked in banking for 10 years and I've done A, B, C, D, E. That's a lot more compelling than that exact same person saying, I want to do something in health tech that's completely unrelated to my background. Because then you're going to start to wonder, like, this person, like, this is a real sound thinker. Like, why would you do this when you have this other realm? I think too, and this is often maybe I think not looked at enough, is are you truly committed to this idea, to this concept? Because as we all know in the room, be it the entrepreneurs or the investors and entrepreneurs, is that this is a very difficult path and not a path to be taken lightly. So if you're not passionate about it or kind of crazy about it, it's not going to be successful. The factor of perseverance is key. I think there's a lot of quote unquote ideas that may have been amazing, but the founders had a lot of perseverance and the ideas may pivot over time, but you have to be really, really committed. And I think it's really important to have that subject matter expertise, ideally in whatever you want to build, because that's just going to make it a lot easier to get buy-in.
Yeah, no, great point. You really touched on something there. Competency is really key. It's one thing to have an idea, but if you're not a subject matter expert, or you're even passionate enough to do the hard work to become a subject matter expert, it becomes really difficult, or at least at the very least understand that it's a weakness and you may need to incorporate a business partner who is that subject matter expert, because once you understand the area that you're in, that can actually help you understand what are the best kinds of solutions to go about with. You may have so really being competent in the field, or at least understanding your awareness, so you know if you have to go get those skills and bring them into the organization, or as you said, be passionate enough to burn that midnight out, to do the constant research to become the expert is really, really important. So yeah, competency is really, really important. So a couple of other questions I do have, because I noticed a couple of persons are they mentioned D, meaning that they're in the business 2 years or over. And oftentimes persons who have a business, it's going pretty okay for the 24 months, you're at the stage of, okay, what's next? How can I level up, right? And that's then where naturally we tend to go to venture capitalism as a potential opportunity. But so for the entrepreneurs who they have a business, they're seeing some level of metrics to determine this is a good business idea. They're 2 years in. Oftentimes we face that kind of like plateau where, growth isn't, as strong as it used to be on month for month in year 1 and year 2. How can you really just get out of that rut? How can you elevate and kind of get beyond that plateau? Any particular strategies or thoughts you may have on how you, as a business, going into year 2, year 3, really push through that plateau barrier? Derrick? Oh, sorry, Nia, go ahead.
Okay. I would say, I think that number one, I think that yes, you want to continue to grow, but I don't think, as Derrick said, like it's not growth at all costs. I think that you want to make sure, one, assess to make sure that your foundation's good. I think that's the key thing with a plateau. 2, I think that like leaning in more to, by that point, and it obviously depends, the first 2 years can go different for everyone, but as you have those like foundational customers that have come in, the people who've been using you for 2 years, or the people who have been supporting you throughout that time, I think leaning into them and saying like, what's missing? Like, what can we do next? How can we kind of provide, I guess, like leveraging your customers' knowledge and the ones who are already paying you for your product. And I think that's really key. I think sometimes people get super excited by the next like shiny new area that they can go to, or the next like way that they can change or develop their product. But I think that like focusing on like the money that you have, the revenue that you have, and saying like, okay, what would make this even better for you? Why did you originally buy into us? And why have you not changed? And kind of gathering those insights and applying them to your product or service, et cetera, is really key. And then when looking at where you can expand to, I think seeing what's already strategically aligned with you is really key. I think seeing areas where you're already kind of getting interest and assessing, like, are they worth it for us to move forward into? I think those are all really like great strategies when it comes time to like, how do I overcome a plateau? It's not like throw everything I already knew out and move on to the next shiny thing. I think it's double down on what's going well, and then use that knowledge to see what's next.
Very interesting. Derrick, any thoughts on that?
I would say definitely agree with the points that Nia shared. I think that's very sound advice to kind of, go where the grass is already green, as opposed to taking more effort to try to water where there isn't fertile ground. But I'm also mindful that, at least in my experience in different entrepreneurial spaces, that it's very important to make sure you're still considering innovation, like how you're going to innovate. I feel there's going to be a lot of sad people in the next couple of years due to ChatGPT, amongst other innovations. But I do think that it's important for you to start to think when you get that 2-3 year mark, especially if you're in that rut, as you mentioned, is saying, looking internally about what you're doing, what you're building. How would I disrupt myself in an ideally positive manner? What would be the thing that would come in and like crush my business? And I think you can always look at examples like, say, like, hey, Blockbuster, like, you could have made some very different decisions and you could have innovated. And I don't know, for those that are familiar, that in the past they were in a position they could have bought Netflix, and actually Netflix wanted them to buy them. So I feel like just being mindful of what can come and innovate. And I also feel that when it comes to getting to that next level, that next stage, is I think there's the importance of seeking wise counsel. And that's unfortunately something that I've seen in the ecosystem in the past that I don't see as much now, and I think is improving, especially from the Black innovation community, is for people that are more experienced, founders that are further downstream, are taking the time now to download best practices into younger founders and say, hey, I just raised my Series C, my Series D. This is the path I took to get there. Maybe these are some insights that could help you alleviate some of those trials and tribulations to make your path a little bit easier. So I think seeking wise counsel and those that are within your sector that are more advanced is a way to kind of help accelerate your growth without going through the hardship.
Excellent point. And just to let the participants know, there are a number of networks that do offer mentorship programs. Youth Village definitely has a mentorship program. Feel free to check out in terms of, as you mentioned, Derrick, seeking wise counsel. I do have a couple of more questions coming in from the audiences. This one was for Nia, but Derrick, we would definitely like to hear from you as well too. Nia, you mentioned some grant opportunities. Could you talk a little more about some potential grant opportunities that either your business provides or that you're aware of? You did mention, I think, to say that startups, what maybe some grants that startups can potentially access. Any other ones you've come across upon your tenure in the industry?
Yeah, I think the last startup that I worked for, we used a grant. I think it was called like Canada Summer Students, and that's how we would have co-op students over the summer, which was really great. I can't remember the exact resources of where we found all of the grants, but like the government of Canada has those grants, and at the, I would say, like federal level is where I think we access most of them that are available and that they want you to apply to. So I think also my key advice for any grant that you ever apply to is reach out before you apply. They will tell you key things to include and can give you insights as to if you're a fit for this or based on what you're looking for, if there's other opportunities as well. So definitely through the government of Canada. I can't remember exactly where all of our resources for, but at the time we were in an accelerator at Invest Ottawa, and they had sent us regular updates as to where you can find those grants.
And I do have one last question from the audience before we break out into the breakout rooms. Someone asks, what are the key values that a mature or seasoned entrepreneur versus a new person in the field of entrepreneurship brings to the table when it comes to entrepreneurship? What would you say are some of the differentiating values between the mature entrepreneur and a newer entrepreneur?
That's an interesting question. I would say, personally, I feel like some of the values that make a successful entrepreneur are kind of like, I think, can be the same. Like I think usually when people come in, they have certain values that they have. Like they'll have certain values of, hard work, perseverance. Like I feel like if you don't have those when you first start your journey, I don't think it's going to magically change. Like I feel like you're just probably not going to exist because your company failed. So I feel like a lot of those things are going to be very similar. I think that there's maybe certain maturity that people probably have. Like when you first start maybe your company, you might be potentially more idealistic in terms of like, I'm going to make 100 million in like 5 years. And like, maybe that's going to take a lot longer. I think that something that's really important is making sure, maybe not in terms of your stage, but in terms of the value alignment that you have with your fellow co-founders. And I think unfortunately for a lot of founders, they don't always go through that internal exercise before they write a line of code, before they go to their first business partner, is make sure, are you aligned with your business partner? I think personally, the person that you marry is probably the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. And I think the person that you decide to make a business with is probably a close second if you're having co-founders. Hence, when I started my company, I started with my wife. Like that was my co-founder. We did this together. And I think that's really important. But I think those are really important skills. I think kind of shifting gears to those that are in startup land, titles are very important, but you might want to provide yourself room for buffer, especially in the technology space. So let's say if I'm starting a company and I get someone that is maybe not an expert CTO person. If you hire that person, you decide we're going to be co-founders and they have the title CTO from day one, it may prevent you from getting the person that's a true CTO a couple years down the road. So I say, don't be so hung up on titles. Maybe just say head of innovation, and I think those are some things that I think are really important to kind of provide yourself that wiggle room so that if you do need to hire a new person, they become the CTO, it doesn't diminish that person that might have been the first developer because maybe all you could afford was a summer intern. But that summer intern did a lot of good work for you. So I think just being mindful about those things.
Okay, excellent point.
Yeah, I totally agree with Derrick. I think that like your values are the main thing. And I think it doesn't matter how old you are. I think that they are truly what shines through. I think you're just based on your age, have different entrepreneurial experiences and like what your journey looks like. I started working at the container farming startup that I worked at previously. That was founded by a 19 and 20-year-old. And by the time I started working there, I was 20, they were 21 and 22. And I would say, and I worked there for 3.5 years and I was the 8th employee and I left last July and grew the company to 50 with them. And I think the key thing, and I think Derrick touched on it before, is like when it comes to that subject matter expertise, no one expects that from you. Where would you have gotten it from? And you also have resources to really lean on. Like we really leaned on like our university, and the university that we all attended ended up being our first customer because to them, they wanted to showcase the innovation of their students, which is a great opportunity. And we were really grateful for. However, I think it also then creates a barrier when certain people are like, I am not going to invest in these children. So nice try, like good luck. As you said, it's really important to like then think of how would we gain additional knowledge over time. But when it comes like later on in your career, I think it's really great when you do have that subject matter expertise and people are able to then lean on what you've had as that experience throughout your career. So I do think that like people assume, or sometimes when you say to someone like, oh yeah, I'm a startup founder, people think in their heads that is somebody in their like early 20s or etc. I think that like when you look at our portfolio of founders at Forum, we've invested in 350 founders. I feel like the majority of them are in their like mid to late 30s, early 40s more so. I think very, very few are in their early 20s. So I think that you can found a company at any time. There's advantages and disadvantages to founding at any point. As Derrick said, though, always making sure that you have those key people to have conversations with who has been through it before, no matter where you're at, is always really, really helpful. And that the values, like no matter who you are, you can be 20 and be extremely stubborn, and you can be 50 and be extremely stubborn. And so I think that like having great values, meaning someone who has a lot of like perseverance. I definitely think like if you have a co-founder, empathy and et cetera is like really important, and it doesn't matter how old you are.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for our two panelists, Derrick and Nia. Awesome job. Really riveting conversation. Okay, so now I'm really excited. especially following that incredible discussion. Now we have the opportunity to talk a little more one-on-one with you guys in a more intimate session in our breakout rooms and have a chance to chat and learn a bit more. Again, this is an opportunity to connect with one another, the other participants as well, not just the panelists, and learn more about each other's knowledge base, your expertise, your businesses. We did mention at the very onset about how important network is. Here's an opportunity to network with your peers. It's also a way to meet new people, as I mentioned, and maybe even form some collaborations or get a business need that you want met. Maybe you can even offer a service to someone who is looking for whatever you're an expert in. So this is a really great way to kind of share and to build with one another in our breakout rooms. You'll be placed into 2 breakout rooms this evening to have, as I mentioned, that one-on-one conversation with our panelists and each other, and you will have the opportunity to ask direct questions and exchange information. We'll let you know when we'll swap your speakers, so keep an ear out. We're probably going to have about 10 minutes per breakout room with each speaker, and then we'll do a little bit of switch so everyone has the opportunity to both hear from Derrick and Nia. So now our tech team in the back will begin to break everyone out. I do hope that you had a very informative session in the breakout room. Before we wrap things up, we just also again want to take a quick poll. Have you guys learned anything tonight? Was there anything important, valuable that you learned tonight, particularly in your breakout rooms? Feel free, just drop it in the chat. We just want to take a quick poll to find out if this session was informative, so we can decide if it's something we want to do more of in the future or optimize it. Feel free, just share your insights in the chat if you thought that today's session was informative, valuable in any way, particularly the sessions that you had in the breakout rooms. I have someone saying great insight in terms of the VC strategies and information from both Nia and Derrick. Again, feel free to just drop in the chat anything that you thought you learned or thought was valuable or inspiration and emotion that you took from our entire topic today, or particularly in the breakout rooms.
Sorry, can you do your pencil? I'm gonna do your pencil.
Someone is also saying great session. Thank you, Nia and Derrick. You guys did an awesome job. It truly was very insightful, very wealth of knowledge. Someone else is saying lovely insights from both panelists, especially about finding co-founders, tapping into exclusive communities, fundraising at the right time. If you actually want to share your thoughts, not just via chat, but actually, if you want to say something, feel free to unmute yourself and speak directly to Nia or Derrick or to the wider audience. It seems like Chris Beth has her hand up. Chris Beth, you would like to share something?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to both Nia and Derrick. Such great conversation, and yourself too, Damon, and audience asking really powerful questions. I think helpful to entrepreneurs at all stages of their journey. I appreciated being in the breakout room and getting a chance to ask some questions. Powerful stuff shared today. Encouragement to everybody. Hopefully something that you heard today inspired you to take action.
Excellent. I have other persons in the chat saying great session, dynamic speakers, a co-founder alignment of skills, personalities, and visions, and key values are essential. Someone took from today's session. We also have someone saying love Derrick's nuggets of wisdom. Easier to leave an employer than to leave your actual family and friends, creating a company of family and friends, creating that stickiness, as you mentioned, and have an environment where persons actually want to stay and grow and thrive in. And someone else is also saying would love to speak, but her mic was damaged, so she wasn't able to participate as meaningfully. But yeah, learned a lot from the breakout rooms, particularly from Chris, Beth's, and Keisha's questions. Someone else is also saying, great job, Nia and Derrick. Well delivered. You guys really did an awesome job as we wrap up things here. Unless you have any further comments at this stage, I'll hand over back to Deborah just to do a quick wrap up for us. Deborah, are you there with us to give us a quick wrap up?
Thank you. Unbelievably, we've been doing Zoom meetings for the last 3 years, and every time I still start to speak with my mic on with my speaker off. So sorry about that. I was clearly chatting away with myself. But just to repeat, we've heard from in the chat the kudos that came through for Nia and Derrick. Wonderful session. And Damon also did an excellent job of moderating. As Chris Beth said, insightful questions. We really appreciate the attendance. If you participated, you liked it, return to our next session. Our next session will be July 31st, 2023. Same time, 6 to 7:30. This is our time. And bring a friend, bring 2 friends. Need to admit someone here. Thierno, just readmitting Thierno, but bring a friend, bring 2 friends. Let's spread the word. At these conversations we've been having, these intergenerational conversations that we've been working in cooperation with ACBN and funded by the Federal Development Corporation. They're excellent conversations. They're, you know, every time is a world of inspiration and a world of wisdom that's being shared. But we need to grow our base. We need to have persons coming back each time to a meeting. So return and bring a friend. So thank you all. And I must say thank you to our program coordinator, Aaliyah. Aaliyah does all of the background work. Aaliyah is the person who identifies the speakers, who puts it all together. Aaliyah, please come off. I know that I know that you are in the background and you're not on camera, but if you could just come on camera for a second so that we can just say a special thank you to you. You have done a fantastic job. So thank you very much, Aaliyah. And okay, I'm spotlighted. I'm not sure if Aaliyah came on camera, but thank you very much to Aaliyah. And so thank you to Damon, thank you to Nia, thank you to Derrick, and many thanks to our sponsor and to our co-partner in the ecosystem, ACBN. Thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Okay, thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Leah, are we remaining in this chat, the wrap up?
Yeah, so I anticipated that maybe some people might want to hang back, but I don't think anyone has. So we'll just transition over to the other meeting, just so we have this as a one recorded.
It shows that there are eight persons still participating.
Yeah, it's mostly us. So we'll move to the other meeting. I've sent everyone a calendar invite, so the link should be in there. If you have any trouble, I'll send it out again.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
You can just send it to me again at Deborah.nurse, because some things went to my Deborah TYVO, but I've been having problems with that today.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I will.
Okay. Okay. Bye, everyone. So we're leaving this and going into the other chat.